The arena on planet Gorth roared like a living storm as thousands of alien voices merged into a deafening wave of mockery and anticipation. High above the battlefield, the twin suns burned through a violet haze, casting jagged shadows across the metal walls and sharp stone edges. The alien warriors stood in their glittering armor, each one built like a mountain, their claws scraping the ground as they laughed at the newcomer stepping onto the sandy floor. He was small, too small compared. To them, his thin frame wrapped in a simple black uniform, and no weapon in sight. His name whispered through the speakers. Ethan Cole, the first human ever to enter the trials of strength in the galactic war games. To the crowd, he looked like prey, a weak experiment sent by a desperate world to prove something no one believed in. The giant alien general with 4 glowing eyes raised his heavy spear and announced that the trial would begin in moments, his voice like thunder echoing against. The wall's cameras hovered in the air, broadcasting the scene to billions across the galaxy, and in every broadcast, alien commentators laughed, calling the human rookie a mistake. A child among titans. Ethan's eyes scanned the arena calmly, his hands. By his side, his breathing steady, but in his mind, calculations ran faster than any human eyes could follow. His wrist bore only a strange silver band, its surface smooth, except for faint scratches that formed an old unknown pattern when the gate behind him opened. The first trial stormed into the arena. 3 monstrous beasts covered in crimson scales and jagged teeth leaping forward with a snarl. The crowd cheered, expecting the human to turn and run, but Ethan didn't move until the very last second. When the beasts were almost upon him, he stepped to the side so fast and precise it was as if he knew where their claws would land before they even moved. He slid under one beast's body, spun around the second, and used the momentum to dodge the third without landing a single strike. The alien warriors burst into laughter louder than before, calling it luck, shouting that even a blind animal could survive a few seconds in the arena. The general signaled for the beasts to press. Harder they leapt again, teeth snapping, tails whipping through the air. Ethan dodged each strike, his movements strangely smooth but not flashy. The crowd started to notice something odd. The human wasn't panicked. His gaze was sharp and locked on the creatures, as if he were reading them like an open book high in the stands. A young alien officer frowned and muttered to his commander that the human was adapting too fast. Then in the middle of the chaos, Ethan's fingers brushed the surface of his wristband. For a heartbeat, a thin golden line of light pulsed from the band, and the air shimmered around him. It was faint. So faint that only a few cameras caught the distortion for less than a second. The crowd went silent, confused as the beasts stumbled mid-leap, as if something invisible had disrupted their timing. Ethan moved again, quicker now, almost a blur, and suddenly he was standing behind the largest beast. Without anyone seeing how he got there, the creature collapsed in the sand unconscious. The other 2 froze, snarling in frustration and uncertainty. The alien warriors exchanged glances, their laughter fading to murmurs. The general's eyes narrowed as he leaned forward, gripping his spear tighter. The cameras replayed the moment. But the footage glitched right when the golden light had appeared, making it impossible to see what Ethan had done. The beasts circled him again, but this time they hesitated, and in that pause, the air in the arena felt different, heavier, charged with something unseen. Ethan looked up toward the stands, his expression calm, but his eyes locked with the general's as if sending a silent message. Then in one final burst of motion, faster than any alien present could track, he moved through. The beasts and all 3 hit the sand at the same time, not dead but unmoving. The crowd erupted in chaos, voices shouting questions, theories, some cheering, others furious at the unexpected turn. The general raised his spear again, signaling the trial was over, but his voice was low and dangerous as he declared that the human rookie had passed the first round. For now, the camera drone floated closer to Ethan, zooming in on his face as he turned away from the fallen beasts and walked toward the next gate, But just before he disappeared into the shadows of the corridor, the silver band on his wrist glowed faintly again, its ancient symbol flashing for the briefest instant and somewhere deep within the command center far beneath the arena. A hidden sensor lit up warning that an energy signature not seen in over 1,000 years had just been activated. The alien crowd outside the arena still buzzed with disbelief as Ethan Cole stepped into the dimly lit corridor leading to the next chamber. His calm footsteps echoed against the metallic walls, and every step seemed to carry a weight that had nothing to do with exhaustion. His breathing was steady, his eyes sharp, but inside his mind the memory of that faint golden glow on his wristband replayed over and over. He had promised himself he wouldn't use it. Not unless there was no other way, but the beasts had been faster than expected, and in that brief instant he had been forced to let the power bleed out even just a little. At the far end of the corridor, a massive steel door slid open with a hiss, revealing a larger arena than before. The sand floor was gone, replaced by smooth black stone that shimmered under the cold blue lights above, and in the center stood Jarak, one of the alien warriors who had mocked Ethan the loudest earlier. His armor gleamed in silver, and his fists were bare. The crowd in the stands roared. Jarak grinned, revealing rows of jagged teeth, and raised his voice so everyone could hear, declaring that he would not even use a weapon to fight a human, because a weapon would be wasted on such fragile prey. Ethan stepped forward silently, the camera drones circling overhead, capturing every angle of his small figure facing the towering alien. The trial began with no warning. Jarak lunged forward with impossible speed for his size, his massive fist cutting through the air, but Ethan tilted his head just enough for it to miss, brushing his cheek like a gust of wind. The crowd gasped. Jarak struck again and again, each blow shaking the ground, but each time Ethan moved just in time, avoiding the hit by inches. His eyes were locked on Jarak's shoulders and hips, reading the slightest shift in movement, predicting the next strike before it came. The alien grew frustrated, his attacks becoming faster and wilder. Ethan felt his heartbeat slow, his focus sharpen, but he also felt the dangerous pull of the wristband, urging him to use more of its power. He resisted for as long as he could, until Jarak feinted to the left and came at him from the right with a blow that could shatter bone in a breath of thought. Ethan's fingers brushed the silver band, and golden light pulsed. Reality seemed to stretch. Sounds became long and distorted. Jarak's fist hung in the air like it was trapped in thick liquid. Ethan stepped aside casually in the slowed world. His body moving without effort, he placed a precise strike to the alien's knee, then to the side of his head, when time snapped. Back, Jarak collapsed to the ground in a violent crash. The crowd exploded in noise, some in awe, others calling foul the general. In the stands, leaned forward, eyes narrowing as he watched the replays again, finding that same moment of strange static and distortion. Ethan stood over the fallen alien, not in triumph, but with measured caution. His nose dripped a thin line of blood. The side effect he feared most. The more he used the wristband, the more it drained him as the medics dragged Jarak away. Ethan turned to face the next gate, but before he could move, a shadow emerged from the far side of the arena. It was a tall figure wrapped in a dark cloak, its face hidden but its voice cold and low, echoing in the air, calling him by name and telling him that the device on his wrist was not meant for humans. Ethan froze, his jaw tightening. The figure stepped closer, and in a flash of movement that none of the cameras could follow, it was suddenly standing right in front of him, leaning close enough for only Ethan to hear whispering that the chronivores would never forgive what he was about to do, and that he had already been marked then. As quickly as it appeared, the figure turned and walked away, melting into the shadows of a side corridor that should not even exist in the arena's design. The gate to the next trial opened, and a blast of cold air swept over him, the sound of rushing water and grinding metal echoing from beyond the passage. He stepped forward, knowing that whatever waited inside would be deadlier than beasts or bare-handed warriors. But in the back of his mind, the whisper echoed over and over a warning that felt like both a threat and a prophecy. And deep beneath the arena in the alien command, center alarms flashed quietly on a hidden console, registering a dangerous spike in temporal energy consistent with technology that had been thought destroyed an age ago. While somewhere high in the stands, the general spoke into a private communicator, instructing unseen agents to test the human harder and force him to reveal the full extent of his hidden power no matter the cost. The cold air from the newly opened gate wrapped around Ethan like a shroud as he stepped inside the third trial chamber. The light here was dim and tinted, a sickly green casting shifting shadows over the strange structure ahead. The arena floor was gone, replaced by a floating platform suspended above an endless dark void. Below, faint beams of blue light streamed up from the depths, making the air shimmer with an unnatural haze. At the far end, 3 figures stood waiting, lean, armored aliens. With narrow, insect-like heads, their armor black as obsidian, and their 4 arms each holding a curved blade. These were assassins bred for one thing only: silent killing. They moved with fluid precision, their eyes glowing faint red as they spread. Out across the platform, the crowd's roar from outside was a distant muffled hum, barely reaching this enclosed space. Here the rules were different. The announcer's voice cracked over the speakers, declaring the trial a zero-gravity combat test. Where the floor would shift, tilt, or vanish entirely without warning, Ethan felt the platform tremble under his feet, and in an instant the gravity vanished. His stomach lurched as he floated upward, the assassins pushing off into the air with terrifying speed, spinning in perfect control, their blades flashing. The first came in from above, and behind the faint reflection of the weapon in the metal wall was Ethan's only warning. He twisted mid-air, narrowly avoiding the strike, pushing himself toward a support beam, while the second assassin closed in from the front. Every move felt slower than he needed it to be. The lack of gravity made dodging harder, and the assassins knew it. Each movement of theirs was a dance planned to trap him. Ethan felt his heartbeat spike the pull of the wristband like a whisper in his mind, telling him to activate it. He forced himself to resist instead, using the environment to twist and roll his body just enough to survive. But the third assassin slipped into his blind spot. The strike would have ended him. He brushed the wristband, and the golden glow returned. Time stretched, the blades froze mid-swing. The shifting debris around him hung motionless. Ethan's breath echoed in his ears as he spun and kicked off the nearest surface, propelling himself past the assassins and striking the back of one's neck with a precise blow. As time snapped back, the alien's body went limp. Drifting in the air, the other 2 hissed in a language he didn't know, their movements doubling in speed. Ethan knew he couldn't keep using the power like this. Each use left his muscles weaker, his head heavier, the blood from his nose now dripping faster. The platform suddenly split apart, the segments drifting away into the void, forcing Ethan and the assassins to leap across floating pieces of floor. One wrong push, and they would drift into the endless darkness. One assassin lunged for him again, and he barely blocked with his forearm, feeling the blades edge tear through his uniform before grabbing the alien's arm and twisting hard, sending them spinning away. But the third was already behind him. A sharp pain exploded in his side as the blade sliced through shallow skin. Ethan's grip tightened on the wristband, but before he could react, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the chamber into total darkness. A strange, static hum filled the air, and in that moment, a voice unlike any he had heard before whispered directly into his mind. "You should not have come here, human." It was cold, metallic, and layered like a chorus of whispers, speaking as one. The wristband on his arm vibrated faintly, and a soft pulse of light illuminated a path ahead. Though he had not activated it, he drifted toward the glow and saw something impossible: an alien prisoner suspended in a containment field hovering above a broken platform. The being was tall, thin, its skin pale like moonlight, and its eyes glowing with the same golden hue as his wristband. When it spoke, its voice bypassed the air, entirely echoing straight into his thoughts, telling him that what he wore was not a weapon, but a relic of the chronovores, a race that had ruled time itself and had been wiped out. Because of it, the being warned that the alien commanders feared his power because they had spent centuries ensuring no one could ever use it again. The lights snapped back on. The assassins were gone, replaced by a holographic projection of the alien general who told Ethan his next trial would begin immediately without rest. The floor beneath him shifted again, the void replaced by the harsh red glow of the fourth arena, and Ethan realized this was no longer just a tournament. It was a hunt to see how far they could push him until the power either killed him or exposed its full and terrible truth. The red glow of the fourth arena washed over Ethan as the floor solidified beneath his feet. The heat in the air was immediate, heavy, and suffocating, as if the walls themselves radiated fire. Massive black pillars jutted upward from the ground, each crowned with blades that spun lazily, their edges glowing from the heat, and in the center of the arena stood the alien champion, taller than any warrior Ethan had. Faced his armor forged from dark crimson metal with veins of molten light running through it, his war crown sharp and jagged like the teeth of a predator. The crowd above roared in anticipation, but there was something different in their voices. Now less laughter, more tension. The champion's voice boomed across the chamber, declaring that he had fought the chronovores 1,000 years ago and survived where others fell. He claimed to know their tricks, their weaknesses, and that Ethan was no true heir to their power, only a thief clinging to something he could not control. Ethan's eyes narrowed, but his breath remained steady. The gate slammed shut behind him, sealing him in the champion, charged with a speed that defied his size. Swinging a massive war axe that split the air with a deep humming roar, Ethan rolled aside, feeling the shock wave of the impact shudder through the floor, molten sparks spraying from the cracked stone. He kept moving, circling his opponent, searching for patterns. But the champion was relentless, his strikes both precise and unpredictable, each one forcing Ethan closer to the pillars, the heat and spinning blades behind him waiting for a single mistake. Ethan's mind raced the pull of the wristband. Stronger now, like a heartbeat in his skin, he resisted activating it, knowing each use brought him closer to collapse. But the champion was reading him, watching his every dodge and feint, and closing the gaps faster than Ethan could open them. Then, mid-swing, the champion spoke low enough that only Ethan could hear, telling him that the real enemy was not in the arena but watching from above, and that Ethan had been betrayed by his own people. The words sliced through his focus. The champion went on claiming that Earth's ambassador had traded his life in exchange for information about the wristband and its potential power. Ethan's jaw clenched, the memory of the ambassador's calm smile before the trials now felt like a lie. The distraction cost him. The champion's axe grazed his shoulder, a searing line of pain, forcing him backward toward a spinning blade pillar with no time to think. Ethan brushed the wristband, the golden light flaring as time stretched the spinning. Blade slowed to a crawl, molten sparks hanging motionless in the air. Ethan stepped aside and, in the slowed moment, drove his knee into the champion's armored ribs, the blow enough to stagger the giant. But as time snapped back, Ethan's vision blurred, the floor tilting beneath him, blood running freely from his nose. He was using too much. The champion laughed, telling him he was burning himself out just as the chronovores had when they fell. Ethan steadied himself, but before the champion could press the attack, the arena lights flickered, then died, plunging the chamber into shadow. A soft, cold glow bloomed in the center of the floor, and from it stepped a figure unlike any he had seen. Tall, elegant, armored in black and silver, her eyes burning gold, the same color as his wristband. She moved with effortless grace, her voice carrying clearly without being raised, calling him by name and telling him that he did not yet understand the device he wore. She said she was the last, heir of the chronovores, and that what he carried was only half of a complete weapon. Ethan barely had time to process her words before she turned her gaze to the champion, and with a flick of her wrist, time froze entirely, the roaring crowd silenced. Mid-cheer, the falling sparks hung in the air. The champion locked mid-stride. She stepped toward Ethan, and in that frozen world told him the champion could not be defeated by power alone, but by breaking the anchor that tied his existence to this timeline. Ethan's mind spun trying to grasp her meaning, but before he could question her, the freeze shattered reality snapping back into violent motion. The champion roared, swinging again, but the woman intercepted the blow with her own device, the clash sending a shockwave across the arena. The crowd gasped, but their amazement turned to chaos as the lights flickered again and the hiss of a sniper shot echoed through the chamber. The woman jerked her head back just enough to avoid instant death. But the shot grazed her neck, sending her device spinning into the air, glowing as it tumbled, and before Ethan could reach for it, the champion's massive hand closed around it, the molten lines in his armor flaring brighter than ever as a deep inhuman laugh rolled across the arena. The champion's laugh rumbled through the arena like distant thunder as he held the second time control device in his massive clawed hand, the molten veins in his armor flaring brighter. With every second, the heat in the air intensified, forcing Ethan to step back as the crowd above roared in both fear and excitement. The alien woman staggered beside him, one hand pressed against the wound on her neck, her golden eyes dimming, but still locked on the champion. Her voice was urgent, her words cutting through the noise, telling Ethan that if the champion mastered both devices, the battle would be over before it even began. Ethan's mind raced, his body heavy from exhaustion and overuse of the wristband, but there was no time to recover. The champion raised the new device, and for a split second, the entire arena shimmered as if reality itself had been stretched. Then everything lurched violently. The crowd gasped as time slowed and twisted around them. Debris and sparks moved sluggishly through the air. But the champion strode forward with impossible speed. Both devices glowing in his hands, his axe swung in a blur, forcing Ethan to dive aside the slowed world, making every movement feel like pushing through deep water. Ethan barely landed on his feet before the champion was there again. Striking from another angle, the alien woman shouted for him to keep moving, warning that every second the devices stayed separate in the champion's control, the time distortion would grow. Worse, Ethan darted behind a molten pillar searching for any weakness in his opponent's movements. But there was none. The champion's mastery of the twin devices was growing with each swing. Ethan's lungs burned, his vision darkened, but he refused to yield. As the champion advanced, he risked a glance at the woman, her armor cracked from the sniper's shot. Her breathing labored, yet she still raised one hand and summoned a small flicker of golden light in the space between them. The glow pulsed, with power not as strong as before, but enough to briefly disrupt the champion's control. Ethan seized the moment, charging in close, dodging a sweeping blow and striking the champion's side with all his strength, but the armor held the blow barely. Registering, the champion snarled and in the slowed world grabbed Ethan by the throat, lifting him off the ground. The pressure crushed his air supply, the wristband on his arm heating dangerously as if warning him to stop, but instead, Ethan pressed his fingers to it. Golden light exploded outward, stronger than he had ever dared to release time. Froze completely, the champion locked in place, the air still and silent. Ethan fell to the ground, coughing, and stared at the unmoving giant. Knowing he had only seconds before the freeze shattered, the woman staggered toward him, holding out her hand, urging him to take her words seriously, telling him to combine the two devices if they were to have any chance of surviving, she explained in hurried breaths that together the devices would overload, releasing enough power to reset the flow of time in the arena, but the risk was unimaginable. The energy could tear them both out of the timeline entirely. Ethan hesitated, his eyes flicking to the champion's clenched fist holding the second device. The freeze began to fracture, faint vibrations rippling through the air, the golden cracks in reality spreading across the arena walls. Ethan clenched his jaw, lunged forward, and pried at the champion's fingers with every ounce of his strength, the frozen armor resisting like solid stone. The woman joined him, her hands glowing as she forced the champion's grip to loosen just enough for Ethan to yank the device free. The freeze shattered time. Snapping back with a deafening boom, the champion roared enraged, swinging his axe. But Ethan now held both devices, their lights merging into a blinding beam. The air around him thrummed with unstable power sparks of golden energy racing up his arms. His muscles screamed in protest, but he ignored the pain, pressing the devices together until they clicked into one seamless band. The arena floor shuddered, the molten pillars cracking as a shockwave burst outward, hurling the champion backward. The crowd screamed, the golden light expanding in every direction. And in that suspended moment, Ethan felt the world bend around him, all sound fading. The woman's voice faint in his ear, telling him this was his only chance to end it before the devices consumed him entirely. He took one step forward, the power flaring brighter than the suns above the champion, struggling to rise under the crushing weight of the fractured timeline. And with the arena trembling, Ethan prepared for the final strike, knowing that the next moments would decide not only the trial, but his place in a war that stretched far beyond this battleground. The arena felt as if it were caught between two worlds, one struggling to move forward, the other dragging everything backward. The golden light from the merged devices pulsed violently in Ethan's hands, each wave of energy bending the air like ripples on water. The molten pillars cracked and fell in slow motion, sparks drifting lazily as if trapped in honey. The champion roared, his voice echoing in both real time and the warped distortion, his massive frame pushing against the crushing gravity of the fractured moment. Every step he took toward Ethan toward jagged holes in the shimmering fabric of reality. Ethan's vision blurred, his chest tight, his pulse thundering. The devices were burning him from the inside out. The woman's voice reached him through the chaos, telling him this was the moment he had to anchor the fracture to himself and end it before the champion adapted to the merged power. Ethan steadied his breath, forced his legs to move, and launched himself forward, the fractured timeline making each stride feel like wading through a storm. The champion swung his axe, the blade, dragging golden afterimages across the air. Ethan ducked under its sparks, brushing his hair, and drove his shoulder into the alien's chest, both of them crashing into a collapsing molten pillar. The impact sent waves of unstable energy spiraling through the arena, freezing and unfreezing fragments of the battlefield. At random, in one instant, the crowd above moved like statues in another. They blurred into streaks of color. The champion snarled, striking again, but Ethan caught the shaft of the axe with both hands and twisted the merged devices, flaring so brightly it hurt to look. The energy surged into the weapon, splintering it into shards that drifted upward like glowing ash. The champion roared in fury, his armor's molten veins dimming as Ethan pressed forward, channeling every remaining fragment of strength into one final push. The golden light expanded, consuming the space between them, swallowing the arena walls, the crowd, the sky above, until there was nothing but the two of them locked in a blinding sphere of fractured time. The woman's voice came again, distant now, warning that the overload would collapse the moment entirely, and that once it did, the universe would choose what pieces to keep and what to erase. Ethan gritted his teeth and forced the device's energy into the champion, the golden light pouring through his armor, cracking it apart piece by piece until the molten glow beneath flickered and died. The alien's roar turned into a distorted echo, fading into silence as his body disintegrated into streams of fractured time, vanishing into the void. The moment shattered the golden light, imploded, pulling inward with a force that dragged at Ethan's very bones. The arena snapped back into real time. The crowd screaming, the molten pillars gone. The champion erased as if he had never existed. But Ethan was still standing in the center, the merged devices glowing faintly on his wrist. The victory was short-lived. The floor beneath him began to ripple and split, not from damage, but from the time fracture collapsing. Without warning, the golden cracks shot outward, devouring the edges of the arena and climbing up toward the stands. The woman appeared beside him, her expression unreadable. She told him he had done what no human or alien had ever done, but that the cost had not yet been paid. Ethan opened his mouth to ask what she meant, but the cracks reached his feet, the pull intensifying, and before he could react, the floor dissolved. Beneath him, the crowd, the arena, the heat, all vanishing into brilliant white silence. He felt weightless, suspended in nothing. Then a rush of air filled his lungs and his eyes snapped open. He was standing on a cracked battlefield, the sky above choked. With black smoke, alien warships hovering low, their weapons glowing. The ground littered with wreckage, both human and alien. The air was cold. The golden glow on his wrist gone, replaced by a faint scar where the device had been. His breath caught, as he realized he was not alone. Ahead, ranks of alien soldiers marched across the field, but among them walked figures in black and silver armor, their eyes burning gold just like the woman's. They turned toward him in perfect unison, and the one in front raised a hand in silent acknowledgement, as if they had been waiting for him all along. In the distance, thunder rumbled. But it was not a storm. It was the sound of an entire world at war, and Ethan knew without doubt that whatever trial he had just survived had only been the beginning.